bush kids are not always normal.
Welcome to 10-Minute Travels. With me as always is Phil Freeman.
And with me, as always, is Shane Patrick. And tonight we have a very special guest, Tia Shoemaker, a really good friend of mine. And she grew up in Bush, Alaska.
Let's get right to it, shall we? Growing up with a backdrop of wilderness, what memories of the natural world do you have that were commonplace that you realize other people would never experience?
Commonplace. Well, I learned really fast that not everyone has a rifle in the outhouse. I learned that not everyone has only one best friend you can't fight with, because then you have no best friend. It's your brother. Do you have mainstream answer to this, or I can tell you the answer that you're looking for, which is that growing up in a million-acre wilderness area with no humans around you, that's not normal, as I find out. Growing up surrounded by bears, moose, wolves, caribou, foxes, all those things, I guess, are not normal to grow up in your, not that you're in their backyard, but you're in theirs. I think every aspect of my childhood was abnormal compared to city life. But of course, it's hard for me to be a critic on it. It's hard for me to remove myself and say, this was unique, because, yes, I've seen it. I've seen what normal people, in parentheses, live, how they live, but it's still, to me, that's just what I knew. So
Sure, it was normal to you.
Yeah.
Over the time, you have bounced around, being, homeschooled in the bush, in a remote camp, to piling into a VW bus and going to Mexico with the family. So you've seen the world as well. So it's a bit of a dichotomy to be able to, reach into both realities. That's remarkable. I don't know how many people stand on this earth right now that could say that they have seen the diversity you have, from the American and Alaskan point of view, which is, unheard of.
Well, I think that in Bush, Alaska, it's actually very rare to have young people come out of it, even semi-normal.
Without a wobble.
Yeah. Most Bush kids I know, they get to the city and they go crazy, or they get super depressed and get on medication, or they have big transition time where they're very challenged by the environment, and that's fair, and I get it. But I think my parents, they had some prudential sense where they knew bush kids are not always normal if they're raised strictly in the bush. So their goal was to raise contributing, healthy, normal individuals. And so they did, they did everything they could to get us out in the world and to experience things and to experience society in its fullest. And sure, we spent 9 to 10 months completely isolated in the bush. And that's with guests, of course. So we had some of that integrated, but also traveling the world. There was a lot of time that we spent traveling the world to, I guess, try to normalize us and let us see that the world is not one tiny homestead, 40-acre homestead in the middle of nowhere.
So put it into perspective. One day you wake up, you walk outside, and you see a fresh wolf print. The next day, you're in the back of a VW bus headed to Baja with the family.
So you were homeschooled in Bush, Alaska for a bit before you interacted with other students. Talk about the culture shock of going from just you and your brother and your mom giving you assignments before you could go play with your bows and arrows to being in a more of a traditional educational setting?
I would say that this kind of speaks to my education, that I really didn't notice culture shock until I got to college. We would come into town twice a year for groceries, and we thought we were normal. We liked to roller skate when we went to town and eat ice cream. We were normal kids. I didn't actually know what culture shock was, other than too many people, and of course we were completely shy and didn't want to speak to anyone, but that's what your parents told you anyway, don't talk to strangers. So we were solid, we were golden, we were just the way that every normal kid is in our books. But come college, then I realized I got some culture shock there, trying to live in a dorm and assimilate. And the biggest thing was having different teachers for university as opposed to yourself, because by high school, being homeschooled, you're teaching yourself everything out of the book. So there was a huge culture shock there, being amongst peers, which we weren't very often amongst our peers. There was always older people. And seeing what was the norm definitely shook me up a bit, I would say.
Why?
Because I think if you're... Oh, how deep do I delve into this one?
Different cultures, I guess.
I think your parents, for the good or the bad, they have a huge influence on you as a child, right? And so if you're raised in the wilderness, your parents have a very impactful, but just like how everything, how they influence you is huge, more than anybody else. And I am very fortunate to have great parents. But of course they don't party and have tons of sex in the dorm room and fail their classes because they're doing drugs. So
my parents didn't do that either.
So going from seeing seeing crazy college behavior that sure you read about and you knew was out there somewhere in the world, and actually experiencing it was much different. And then also, I guess
different value system,
very much, yeah. And the being surrounded by a concrete jungle, where you're like, it's not like a hippie, but like your spirit can't be free in that. Like you can't commune with nature, and so
that's all you know, right? Of course. Right?
Yeah, I think that like depression, I didn't learn about depression being a real thing until I was surrounded by concrete buildings, and we need wilderness, we need wild places to feel grounded and happy in ourselves. I think that was the biggest culture shock of it all, is that some people can live that lifestyle without ever being truly connected.
That was Tia Shoemaker. If you want to learn more about Tia or listen to more 10-Minute Travels, please check us out at 10minutetravels.com.
And we want to remind you to make sure that your sense of humor matches your sense of adventure. And please like, subscribe, and share this podcast on all the platforms.